Thierry Dupin, a respected judge, had always upheld justice with unwavering dedication. But one fateful night, his world was shattered when he was arrested in front of his young son, Lucas, for crimes he did not commit. What followed was a heart-wrenching journey filled with betrayal, public humiliation, and unimaginable hardships. As Thierry endured the torment of prison and Lucas struggled with life in foster care, hope seemed distant. Yet, through the relentless efforts of investigative journalist Pauline Martin and his loyal defense attorney, Marie Durand, the truth slowly began to emerge. A conspiracy was uncovered, and justice finally prevailed, leading to a powerful redemption that united a father and son and inspired an entire community. This emotional story of courage, resilience, and triumph over injustice will stay with you long after the final scene. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. Thierry Dupin, a well-regarded judge known for his integrity, sat peacefully at home, enjoying a quiet evening with his 10-year-old son, Lucas. The stillness of the night was abruptly shattered by a forceful, urgent knock at the door. Thierry's heart sank as a sense of dread washed over him. Rising from his chair, he looked at Lucas, his voice firm but filled with unease. "Stay here, Lucas," he instructed, masking the anxiety brewing inside him. As he approached the door, a dark foreboding clouded his thoughts. The door creaked open, revealing a group of stern-faced officers with Captain Pierre Dubois standing at the forefront. Dubois, his expression cold and unyielding, wasted no time. "Thierry Dupin, you are under arrest for corruption and conspiracy," he declared, his words cutting through the air like a blade. Thierry's breath caught in his throat, his eyes widening in disbelief and indignation. This was a nightmare. There must be some mistake, he managed to utter, his voice tight with shock and confusion. But before he could protest further, the officers swiftly cuffed his wrists. The clinking of metal echoed through the hallway, and at that moment, Lucas, unable to stay hidden, appeared at the door. His innocent eyes brimmed with tears, a reflection of fear and confusion. "Dad, what's going on?" Lucas asked, his small voice trembling with a mix of panic and helplessness. Thierry forced a faint smile, trying to be strong for his son. "Don't worry, Lucas," he reassured, though his own heart was heavy with uncertainty. "Everything will be all right. Trust me." But as he was led away, even his words seemed fragile and hollow. Watching from a distance was Pauline Martin, a relentless investigative journalist who had been following a trail of police and political corruption. Her instincts flared with curiosity and purpose. As Thierry was escorted out, she discreetly pulled out her phone, recording every moment of the shocking arrest. This was no ordinary case. It was a tangled web of power, betrayal, and deceit, and Pauline sensed that Thierry was caught in the middle of it all. Meanwhile, in an opulent office bathed in shadows, Antoine Leblanc, a corrupt businessman, smirked at the news of Thierry's arrest. Leblanc knew that Thierry had been a formidable adversary, a judge who refused to bend to pressure or bribes. Removing him from the equation had been necessary for Leblanc's illicit empire to continue thriving. The framing had worked perfectly, and now, with Thierry out of the way, his criminal dealings could proceed without fear of interference. Captain Dubois, though confident in the evidence that had led to the arrest, couldn't shake a creeping doubt. As he watched Thierry's reaction, his genuine shock, his refusal to beg or plead, a tiny spark of uncertainty flickered within him. Could they have made a terrible mistake? For a brief moment, his resolve wavered, but he quickly pushed the thought aside, determined to carry out his duty. Inside the patrol car, a young officer named Jacques glanced at Thierry, admiration and disbelief mingling in his eyes. "That's Judge Dupin," he whispered to his partner. "He's the one who's been fighting corruption for years. How could he be involved in this mess?" His older, more jaded colleague shook his head dismissively. "Nothing is ever as it seems, kid," he replied, though the seed of doubt had already taken root in Jax's mind. As news of Thierry's arrest spread like wildfire, the headlines blared across every screen and newspaper. Respected judge brought down by corruption scandal. The story dominated the media, and soon, a throng of reporters gathered outside the police station, eager to capture the disgraced judge's every move. When Thierry was finally escorted out of the car, the onslaught of camera flashes blinded him momentarily, each burst of light a cruel reminder of his fall from grace. He tried to maintain his composure, but the weight of public shame pressed heavily on his shoulders, and despair was etched in his eyes. The crowd buzzed with whispers and accusations, their voices dripping with judgment and condemnation. "How does it feel to betray the very system you swore to uphold?" a reporter shouted. "Do you deny the charges, Judge Dupont?" Another asked. Thierry remained silent, knowing that any word he spoke could be twisted and used against him. He stood there, feeling the crushing humiliation and the sting of betrayal from a world that had once respected him. As a black man who had risen to power through hard work and determination, the hostility directed at him now felt even more vicious. The media's portrayal of him seemed harsher, the prejudice lurking beneath their words and headlines. Every glare, every accusatory finger pointed his way felt like a blow to his dignity. Thierry could feel the judgment in the air, an invisible weight pressing down on him as he faced the harsh reality of being torn down by a system he had spent his life upholding. Pauline Martin couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with the case against Thierry Dupont. The speed and convenience with which the evidence had surfaced raised red flags. Hunched over her desk in her modest, cluttered office, Pauline's fingers flew across the keyboard, piecing together every detail she could find. She cross-referenced reports, revisited trusted sources, and dug deeper into every lead. Her instincts screamed that this was more than just an open and shut case. The next morning, her hard work culminated in an article that shook the public. Framed Judge Hoax or Truth in her expose. Pauline boldly questioned the legitimacy of the charges, hinting at a sinister conspiracy designed to bring down a man of integrity. The article quickly spread across social media like wildfire, igniting heated debates and polarizing the public. Some people rallied behind Thierry, clinging to the hope that Pauline's courage might be the key to unraveling the truth, while others issued veiled threats, trying to silence her. As Thierry endured public disgrace, Antoine Leblanc basked in the glow of victory. At an exclusive, lavish event surrounded by powerful politicians and influential businessmen, Antoine raised his glass with a smug smile. "We did it, gentlemen," he declared with satisfaction. "Thierry Dupont is out of our way. Now, we can proceed with our plans, free of his interference." The men around him clinked their glasses, their laughter filled with arrogance and complicity. They believed they had won, that Thierry was a mere casualty in their grand scheme. For Antoine, the moment of triumph was intoxicatingly sweet. Though he knew the fight was not over, he was confident that he had orchestrated everything flawlessly. In his mind, Thierry's fall was only the beginning of an unstoppable rise in his power. But while Antoine celebrated, Lucas's life spiraled into a nightmare of relentless torment. At school, the once vibrant and innocent boy became the target of brutal bullying. "Your dad's a criminal," a boy sneered as he shoved Lucas against a locker. "Are you a liar too?" another boy mocked, his words cutting deep into Lucas's fragile heart. The teachers tried, but their efforts to intervene were futile. The cruelty of the taunts, the laughter of his peers, it all echoed in Lucas's mind long after the school day had ended. He found himself withdrawing from the world, shrinking into a shell of the boy he once was. Every day felt like torture, and he wondered if life would ever return to the way it used to be. Racial prejudice only intensified his isolation, as whispers and hateful glances followed him wherever he went. Nightmares began to plague him, and slowly, the things that had once brought him joy faded into the background. The weight of emotional pressure bore down on him, crushing his spirit a little more each day. Amid this turmoil, Marie Durand, Thierry's longtime friend and dedicated defense attorney, worked tirelessly to uncover the truth. Her office was a battlefield of scattered documents, files, and reports, each piece of evidence scrutinized with unwavering focus. Marie knew that proving Thierry's innocence would be an uphill battle, but she was relentless. She spoke with witnesses, examined testimonies, and revisited every piece of evidence with a fine-toothed comb. Slowly, cracks began to appear in the seemingly airtight case against Thierry. Contradictory testimonies and signs of planted evidence started to emerge, each discovery fueling Marie's determination. She was driven not just by her duty as a lawyer, but by her deep sense of justice and loyalty to her friend. Sleepless nights became the norm as she pored over every line of testimony, every detail that might hold the key to saving Thierry. The day of the trial arrived, and the courtroom buzzed with tension. Every seat was filled, the hum of conversation filling the air with an electric energy. Thierry sat beside Marie, his gaze steady but his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel the weight of the world pressing down on him, as though this moment held the balance of his entire future. When the judge entered, the room fell into an eerie silence, the kind that made the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. Thierry's pulse raced as the trial began, the stakes higher than ever. Marie rose with purpose, her voice strong and unwavering. "Your Honor," she began, handing over meticulously prepared documents, "I present to you a series of inconsistencies in the evidence brought against my client, Thierry Dupont." Her words cut through the still air like a razor, drawing the attention of everyone in the room. The testimonies from the prosecution's witnesses are riddled with contradictions, and we have evidence that key pieces were tampered with. With precision and clarity, she highlighted each point, her voice carrying the weight of her determination. The tension in the room thickened with each revelation, eyes darting between the judge and Marie as she methodically dismantled the prosecution's case. The judge's face remained impassive, a mask of unreadable authority, but those eyes betrayed a flicker of something unsettling. Pauline Martin's investigation intensified, driven by a sense of responsibility and a desire for justice. One gray and rainy afternoon, her phone rang unexpectedly. The voice on the other end was hushed, laced with urgency. "I have information on Judge Dupont's case that you might find valuable," the caller said, withholding their identity. Pauline's heart skipped a beat. She agreed to meet the source at a discreet cafe, tucked away from prying eyes. When she arrived, she found a man sitting nervously in the corner, his eyes darting around the room. Without saying much, he slid an envelope across the table. Pauline thanked him quietly and quickly left, the weight of the envelope in her bag feeling like a bomb ready to explode. Back in her office, she ripped it open, her hands trembling with anticipation. Inside, she found damning evidence documents revealing suspicious bank transfers and transcripts of intercepted conversations that pointed directly to a conspiracy to frame Thierry. Pauline's pulse quickened. This could be the breakthrough that would change everything. Without hesitation, she called Marie, her voice a mix of excitement and urgency. "Marie, I have something huge. This could be what we need to save Thierry." Meanwhile, Antoine Leblanc was far from calm. The confidence he once exuded had been replaced by a gnawing sense of dread. He hastily arranged a meeting with Julien Lev, his partner in crime, at a secluded location. As they sat face to face, Antoine leaned in, his voice a low, menacing growl. "Julien, we must stick to our story." No matter what, he warned, his eyes dark with threat. "If Thierry clears his name, everything we've worked for will crumble." Julien, visibly uncomfortable, nodded, though his hands shook slightly. "I know, Antoine," he stammered, "but things are spiraling out of control. Marie won't back down, and now Pauline has uncovered something that could ruin us. I'm scared everything will collapse." Antoine's temper flared. He grabbed Julien by the collar, pulling him close. "Then make sure it doesn't collapse. Do whatever it takes, Julien." "Do you hear me?" Julian gulped, the weight of Antoine's threat pressing down on him like a vise. He knew there was no turning back now, but fear gnawed at his resolve. As the walls closed in, Captain Pierre Dubois found himself caught in a storm of doubt. He had once been so certain of Thierry's guilt, but now, as he sat at his desk, poring over the evidence again and again, cracks began to show. Marie's relentless pursuit of truth, combined with Pauline's fearless investigation, stirred something within him. Dubois had always prided himself on his sense of justice, but now he couldn't shake the feeling that the case against Thierry was built on lies and manipulation. The speed at which everything had unfolded nagged at him. Did I rush to judgment, he wondered, the weight of his conscience bearing down on him. His once stern and confident demeanor was now marked by worry, his face etched with lines of concern. As new pieces of information surfaced, his faith in the integrity of the investigation crumbled. Dubois knew he had to make a decision whether to continue down the path he had started or risk everything to uncover the truth. In the courtroom, tension hung thick in the air. After Marie's powerful presentation of the inconsistencies in the evidence, the prosecutor approached Thierry with a calculated offer. His tone was deceptively calm, almost coaxing. "Mr. Dupin, if you accept a guilty plea, we can arrange for a significant reduction in your sentence. It's the best outcome you could hope for." Thierry looked him squarely in the eye, unflinching. "I will not plead guilty to a crime I did not commit," he said, his voice steady and resolute. "I'd rather fight for the truth." No matter the cost, his refusal to accept the deal sent ripples of surprise through the courtroom. Murmurs spread among the spectators, many of whom hadn't expected such defiance. The judge, observing the exchange closely, remained unreadable, his expression a mask of impassivity. But something about his gaze unsettled Marie. There were moments when he seemed to avoid looking directly at him, as if he too was caught in a conflict of interest. Every word, every glance in that courtroom was charged with the feeling that forces far greater than the law were at play. The atmosphere grew heavier by the minute, as if the very walls of the courtroom were closing in. For Thierry, each moment felt like a silent battle between hope and despair, but he refused to give in. His fate now rested in the hands of those who might not be willing to see justice done. And for Marie and Pauline, the fight was just beginning, a fight that would demand every ounce of courage and determination they had left. Within the frigid, decaying walls of the prison, Thierry Dupin waged a harrowing battle to preserve his composure and sense of self-worth. The chilling news of his arrest had spread with alarming speed throughout the grim, oppressive environment of the cell block, where many of the inmates harbored deep-seated resentment toward him. These were individuals whom he had once stood before in his role as a judge, doling out sentences with an unwavering commitment to justice and integrity. Now, they looked at him with eyes full of contempt and vindictive glee, eager to see him suffer for his perceived transgressions. The situation deteriorated further into a living hell when Antoine Leblanc, a man consumed by a vengeful fury, used his considerable resources to bribe corrupt guards and incite fellow prisoners against Thierry. Each day in the prison became a relentless ordeal, with Thierry's every moment shadowed by the specter of cruelty and violence meticulously orchestrated to break him. His once unshakable confidence was now a mere flicker in the storm of his ordeal, as he grappled with the overwhelming sense of betrayal and despair that engulfed him. One particularly sinister night, when the oppressive darkness seemed to close in like a suffocating shroud, Thierry attempted to find solace in sleep. The oppressive silence of his cell was abruptly shattered by the ominous sound of heavy, purposeful footsteps echoing through the cold corridor. The metallic clang of the cell door being wrenched open heralded the arrival of his tormentors. Three menacing figures, their faces twisted with malevolent intent, were accompanied by a corrupt guard who reveled in his role as their enforcer. "Time for payback," Judge one of the attackers snarled, his voice dripping with venomous satisfaction. Thierry's heart pounded with a mix of terror and defiance as he tried to mount a futile defense, but the onslaught of violence was swift and brutal. The attacker's blows came with an almost rhythmic ferocity, each strike landing with cruel precision. The air became thick with the acrid, metallic scent of blood, mingling with the anguished cries and the relentless barrage of insults and threats. The excruciating pain that seared through his body felt like an eternity stretched into every agonizing second, a torment that seemed both endless and unrelenting. In a parallel universe of torment, Thierry's young son, Lucas, was plunged into his abyss of despair. The collapse of his father's world and the absence of a stable guardian led to his sudden placement in foster care, a system that felt foreign and hostile. Lucas's sense of abandonment was profound, as he was severed from the comforting embrace of his familiar world. The new environment was starkly impersonal, its coldness only magnified by the echoes of laughter and voices from other children that seemed distant and unreal. Each night was a restless struggle, with Lucas lying awake in a room that felt devoid of warmth or comfort. His heart ached with an overwhelming longing for his father's reassuring presence. The room, with its sterile, indifferent atmosphere, felt like a prison of its own, reinforcing the chasm between him and his previous life, each object a reminder of what had been cruelly taken from him. Amid this sea of suffering and uncertainty, Pauline Martin emerged as a beacon of relentless determination and courage. Her investigation into Thierry's case had unearthed a troubling array of inconsistencies and deceit. Driven by an unwavering commitment to justice, Pauline poured her findings into a powerful, incendiary article titled "A Conspiracy Against Justice: The Thierry Dupont Case." Her words were a clarion call that reverberated through the public consciousness, shaking the very foundations of the official narrative. Pauline's article meticulously detailed the discrepancies and potential misconduct, casting a stark light on the possibility of a deliberate conspiracy aimed at destroying Thierry's life. The response was nothing short of explosive. While some clung stubbornly to their belief in Thierry's guilt, a growing tide of skepticism began to challenge the accepted version of events. Pauline's fearless exposition of the truth reignited hope among those who steadfastly believed in Thierry's innocence, offering a glimmer of light in the face of overwhelming darkness and adversity. Marie Durand finally uncovered a critical piece of evidence that had the potential to shift the entire trajectory of the case. In the dimly lit, cozy confines of a small cafe, she met with a former employee of Antoine Leblanc, a man visibly shaken and burdened by his conscience. "I can't live with this on my conscience anymore," he confessed, his voice trembling. "Antoine paid me to falsify evidence against Thierry." Marie listened with unwavering focus, her heart racing as she recorded every detail of his revelations. This new witness might be the crucial link needed to dismantle the prosecution's case. Although the road ahead promised to be fraught with obstacles, this breakthrough injected a fresh wave of determination and hope into Marie's mission. Armed with the signed statement and the evidence she had gathered, she was resolute in her quest to exonerate Thierry. The gleam of renewed hope in her eyes stood in stark contrast to the exhaustion etched into her features from countless sleepless nights. She steeled herself for the legal battle that lay ahead, driven by the promise of justice and the possibility of redemption. Meanwhile, inside the prison's harsh confines, Thierry's plight grew even more dire. One grim afternoon, as he made his way to the cafeteria, he found himself encircled by a menacing group of inmates. "Well, look who we have here, the illustrious Judge Dupont." One of them jeered, a sneer of malice twisting his lips. Before Thierry could even process the threat, he was subjected to a vicious assault. The very men he had once sentenced to confinement now channeled their pent-up anger and resentment into a brutal beating. Thierry fought back with whatever strength he could muster, but the relentless barrage of blows left him battered and defenseless. Each strike was not merely a physical assault, but a searing reminder of the betrayal and injustice he had endured. The harsh sounds of fists meeting flesh and Thierry's anguished cries reverberated through the grim prison corridors, as he clung desperately to the flickering hope that justice might yet prevail. In the foster home, young Lucas was engulfed by a profound sense of sorrow and abandonment. Seated by the window, he watched other children frolic outside, their carefree laughter a painful reminder of his isolation. The nights were particularly harrowing, marked by silent tears as he clutched a tattered teddy bear, a cherished gift from his father. Lucas felt an overwhelming void where his father's love and security once resided. The constant uncertainty about his future only deepened his sense of despair. He frequently glanced at his phone, longing for a call that never came. Marie's occasional visits offered a fleeting comfort, but they did little to assuage the pervasive loneliness that engulfed him. Each day felt like an unending trial, filled with fear and unanswered questions. Lucas wondered if he would ever regain the sense of safety and affection that had been so abruptly torn from his life. Elsewhere, Captain Dubois sat in his office, surrounded by an array of evidence and reports strewn across his desk. His mind was clouded with a growing sense of unease and doubt. As he meticulously reviewed the documents once more, discrepancies began to surface, testimonies that conflicted, bank records that didn't add up, and a timeline that seemed to unravel under scrutiny. Dubois's frown deepened as guilt gnawed at him, challenging the convictions he had previously held. How did this pass through without raising red flags, he muttered to himself, his voice laced with frustration. Realizing that something was profoundly amiss, he resolved to dig deeper, starting to question those he had once deemed reliable. The quest for truth became a deeply personal mission for him, a tumultuous battle between his professional duty and the stark reality of the truth. Pauline Martin persevered in her relentless quest for justice. During a grueling, sleepless night of scrutinizing a mountain of digital files and legally obtained recordings, she stumbled upon a video that immediately seized her attention. The video captured a covert meeting between Antoine and his accomplices, though the audio was distorted and the voices remained frustratingly inaudible. Despite the lack of clarity, Pauline could discern enough to suspect a troubling connection between Antoine and several high-powered individuals. Recognizing the potential significance of this footage, Pauline wasted no time reaching out to Marie with her discovery. "Marie, you have to see this. It may not be conclusive proof, but it undeniably casts a shadow of doubt over Thierry's conviction," she said, her voice barely containing her excitement. Marie watched the video multiple times, dissecting every visual detail with meticulous care. "This could be the catalyst we need for a review hearing," she declared with steely resolve. Both women understood that while the video was far from definitive, it represented a critical breakthrough in their ongoing fight to unravel the conspiracy. In the meantime, Marie arranged a long-awaited visit for Lucas to see his father in prison. The day of the visit was fraught with nervous anticipation for the young boy. As Lucas stepped into the visiting room, his anxiety melted away the moment he laid eyes on his father. Without hesitation, he dashed into Thierry's open arms. "Dad, I missed you so much," he said, his voice breaking with emotion and tears streaming down his face. Thierry enveloped his son in a heartfelt embrace, overwhelmed by a flood of relief and love. "I missed you too, son. I missed you terribly," Thierry responded, his voice thick with emotion. That poignant reunion brought a moment of profound emotional solace to both father and son. "We'll get through this together, Lucas. I promise you." Thierry vowed, his words resonating with unwavering determination. The unspoken connection between them spoke volumes, conveying more than words ever could. Equipped with the compelling new evidence from Pauline and the revelations provided by Captain Dubois, Marie Durand orchestrated a crucial hearing to re-examine Thierry's case. The courtroom was a hive of activity, brimming with journalists and spectators eager to witness the proceedings. The atmosphere was charged with palpable tension. Marie, exuding confidence and unwavering resolve, presented the fresh evidence to the judge. "Your Honor, the evidence before you unequivocally suggests that my client has been the target of a deliberate conspiracy." While the video alone may not be conclusive, it strongly implies a dubious alliance between Antoine and several powerful figures. We urge the court to reconsider all charges against my client in light of these significant new revelations, she argued passionately. The judge, swayed by the robustness of the new evidence and the inconsistencies unearthed by Dubois, consented to a reevaluation of the case. A glimmer of hope began to spread through the courtroom as the possibility of justice seemed to inch closer with each passing moment. In the courtroom, Thierry was finally granted the chance to speak, a moment he had been yearning for with a deep, burning intensity. Rising to his feet, he drew in a shuddering breath, his chest heaving as he fought to steady his voice, which trembled with raw emotion. "Your Honor, esteemed ladies and gentlemen of the court," he began, his voice cracking under the weight of his anguish, "I stand before you accused of a heinous crime I did not commit. The excruciating agony of being torn away from my beloved son and subjected to public disgrace is beyond words, beyond any description I can offer. Yet, I am here not only to vindicate myself but to advocate for every soul wronged by a system riddled with corruption." He paused, letting the reverberation of his words fill the courtroom, the silence almost deafening. Truth, no matter how buried, always manages to surface. "I extend my deepest gratitude to all who have steadfastly believed in my innocence and worked tirelessly to unearth the truth. I seek not merely justice for myself, but for every individual betrayed by this tainted system." The courtroom was visibly moved, many attendees wiping away tears. Lucas, seated beside Marie, gazed at his father with a renewed sense of reverence. Thierry's impassioned plea resonated deeply with everyone present, rekindling their commitment to the pursuit of truth and justice. The atmosphere was charged with palpable tension, yet there was a burgeoning sense that the scales of justice were beginning to tilt in Thierry's favor. Captain Pierre Dubois, grappling with mounting evidence of Thierry Dupin's innocence, found himself engulfed in a storm of frustration and determination. Seated at his cluttered desk, he meticulously reviewed the damning evidence he had painstakingly amassed. Despite the personal risk to his career, Dubois's commitment to uncovering the truth overshadowed his concerns. The scattered documents on his desk seemed to bear the weight of his moral obligation. How did this glaring injustice escape notice, he pondered, a gnawing doubt undermining his previous beliefs. Resolute in his quest for truth, Dubois decided to operate clandestinely. He embarked on a covert investigation, gathering further evidence and probing the individuals entangled in the conspiracy. The need for discretion was paramount, as any misstep could jeopardize his cover and expose his intentions. Despite the perilous nature of his decision, Dubois was unwavering in his resolve to pursue justice. Pauline Martin, driven by an unyielding quest for justice, pressed forward with relentless determination. One afternoon, she met with a hesitant witness, a former employee of Antoine, who held critical information. "You must understand, this is an opportunity to rectify a profound injustice," Pauline implored, her voice brimming with urgency and heartfelt sincerity. The witness, his eyes shadowed with fear, hesitated. "I witnessed Antoine bribing numerous individuals to frame Thierry," he confessed, his voice trembling with trepidation. "But I fear the repercussions if he discovers I spoke out." "You are not alone in this fight," Pauline reassured him, her voice a beacon of hope. "We have a dedicated team committed to protecting you. Together, we will ensure your safety and bring justice to light." Moved by Pauline's fervent dedication, the witness agreed to testify publicly, a courageous decision that could turn the tide in Thierry's favor. Though the choice was fraught with difficulty, the assurance of protection and justice offered a glimmer of relief. After securing the witness's testimony, Pauline discovered an ominous, anonymous letter on her desk. The envelope, devoid of any sender's name, was simply addressed to her. As she opened it, A chilling message awaited her: cease your interference, or face dire consequences. A shiver of dread coursed through Pauline, but the threat only steeled her resolve. The letter, a stark reminder of the danger she faced, was kept with trembling hands as she braced herself for the mounting pressure. Antoine Leblanc, realizing that his carefully laid plans were unraveling, began to sense a shift in dynamics. He observed Julien leave, his accomplice, acting increasingly erratic. Julien's avoidance of meetings and evasive responses fueled Antoine's suspicions. One night, in a tense and private confrontation, Antoine faced Julien directly. "Are you concealing something from me?" Antoine demanded, his voice a chilling mix of authority and menace. Julien, drenched in sweat and overwhelmed by the weight of suspicion, stammered, "No, Antoine, I'm just concerned about the risks we're taking." Antoine's mistrust remained unshaken, and he resolved to keep a close watch on Julien. The escalating tension between them threatened to unravel the intricate conspiracy they had woven. As Lucas spent more time with his father during their prison visits, he began to grasp the profound complexity and depth of the injustice that had befallen Thierry. Each visit revealed layers of anguish and deceit, transforming Lucas's confusion and fear into a fierce, unwavering resolve. "Dad, I know in my heart that you're innocent, and I am determined to stand by you and help in any way I can," Lucas declared with newfound conviction. Thierry, deeply moved by his son's unwavering support, took the time to meticulously explain every intricate detail of the case to Lucas. "The truth will emerge victorious, my son. Your strength and belief in me are the sources of my renewed courage and resolve." Thierry affirmed, feeling an invigorating surge of hope from Lucas's steadfast loyalty. This deepening understanding and mutual support forged an even stronger bond between father and son, enhancing Thierry's resilience and fortifying his determination. Lucas, who once grappled with uncertainty and fear, now felt a powerful, burgeoning determination within him. Marie Durand, fiercely committed to exonerating Thierry, pursued her investigation with relentless vigor. One afternoon, while poring over a mountain of documents and financial records, Marie uncovered a pivotal clue, a direct financial link between Antoine and the actual perpetrators of the crime Thierry was wrongly accused of. The records revealed a dubious bank transfer that connected Antoine to one of the principal figures involved in the crime. "This is it," Marie exclaimed, a wave of astonishment and relief washing over her. Armed with this crucial piece of evidence, she knew she now possessed a formidable argument to present in court. This breakthrough not only bolstered Thierry's case but also unveiled Antoine's true, nefarious nature. The growing tension in the air signaled that a dramatic resolution was nearing. Captain Pierre Dubois, increasingly resolute in his belief in Thierry's innocence, chose to take more decisive and covert action. Under the cover of the night, he arranged a clandestine meeting with Marie Durand in a nondescript cafe. With a grave expression, Dubois handed Marie an envelope brimming with confidential documents. "These are critical pieces of evidence I have gathered in secrecy." They establish a direct connection between Antoine and the true culprits, including Julien Leave, Dubois said, his voice laced with urgency. Marie opened the envelope to find a trove of documents, bank records, intercepted communications, and other incriminating materials. "This is exactly what we need to fortify Thierry's defense," Marie responded, her eyes gleaming with resolute determination. Bolstered by a surge of hope, she began strategizing on how to present this evidence effectively in court. During a subsequent prison visit, Marie shared the groundbreaking evidence with Thierry. "We have uncovered bank records and intercepted communications that directly link Antoine and Julien to the real culprits," Marie explained, laying out the documents for Thierry to see. The revelation ignited a mix of seething anger and steely determination in Thierry. So it was Antoine all along, with Julien deeply entangled. "They will face justice for their treachery," he vowed, his fists clenched tightly in a display of resolute defiance. In the days leading up to the delivery of the evidence to Marie, Dubois had observed troubling behavior from Julien. During a routine investigation, he noticed Julien engaging in a secretive meeting with Antoine. Watching from a discreet distance, Dubois saw Julien's nervous demeanor and his evasive avoidance of direct eye contact with Antoine. This furtive behavior strongly indicated that Julien was concealing crucial information. This unsettling discovery propelled Dubois to delve deeper, culminating in the acquisition of the pivotal evidence that would be instrumental in Thierry's defense. Pauline Martin, on the brink of exposing a scandal of seismic proportions, was tirelessly preparing an article that promised to shake the very foundations of local society. After weeks of rigorous investigation and meticulous validation of her findings, she finally compiled the damning material needed to unveil Antoine Leblanc's rampant corruption. Seated in her office, Pauline typed fervently, her fingers dancing over the keyboard as she poured every detail of her revelations into the article. The next morning, her expose hit the headlines with the provocative title, "Corruption Exposed the Truth." About Antoine Leblanc, the article meticulously detailed Antoine's illicit transactions, bribery schemes, and manipulative tactics used to frame Thierry. The piece spread like wildfire, igniting a public uproar and thrusting Antoine into the unforgiving glare of public scrutiny. The immediate reactions were explosive, with protests erupting and demands for justice intensifying by the hour. Driven to desperation by the relentless tide of new accusations and the devastating impact of Pauline's searing article, Antoine Leblanc resolved to take drastic measures to safeguard his crumbling empire. He embarked on a calculated campaign of intimidation, aiming to silence any potential witnesses and obliterate all traces of incriminating evidence. Antoine wielded his extensive network with ruthless efficiency, employing bribes, threats, and sheer coercion to neutralize those who possessed dangerous information that could unravel his carefully constructed facade. Julien Lève, caught in the whirlwind of escalating tension, became increasingly anxious. "We need to end this before it's too late," Julien thought, his mind racing with fears of both Antoine's wrath and the looming threat of exposure. Antoine, unrelenting in his pursuit of self-preservation, intensified his threats and manipulations, creating an atmosphere thick with fear and distrust. During his prison visits, Lucas began to witness the true depth of his father's strength and resilience. Each conversation and gesture from Thierry reflected an unshakable determination to fight for justice against overwhelming odds. Lucas, once lost and bewildered, now saw Thierry in a new light, an embodiment of courage and dignity. "Dad, you are a true hero," Lucas declared one day, his eyes brimming with admiration. Thierry, deeply touched, responded with a warm smile. "I'm fighting this battle for us, Lucas. With you by my side, I feel a renewed strength and purpose," he said. This profound emotional bond between father and son deepened, infusing Thierry with a renewed sense of hope and fortitude that justice would ultimately prevail. Determined to expose the truth and shift the balance of power, Thierry began meticulously planning a confrontation with Julien Lève. During one of Marie's visits, Thierry shared his strategy. "Julien holds the key to everything. He possesses the knowledge and confession we desperately need," Thierry explained, presenting documents that highlighted Julien's involvement with Antoine. Marie, though apprehensive, was reassured by Thierry's resolute determination and agreed to assist. "We can lure him here under the guise of a plea negotiation," she suggested, her confidence blending with concern. Thierry agreed, recognizing this as the crucial opportunity he had long awaited. The stakes were high as they meticulously orchestrated every detail of the impending encounter. When Julien finally arrived in the visiting room, his anxiety was palpable. Thierry, with a commanding presence, began his confrontation. "Julien, we have undeniable evidence linking you to Antoine. It's time to come clean and tell the truth," Thierry declared, his gaze unwavering. "Julien, visibly sweating and trembling, realized he was trapped. The crushing weight of his guilt and the looming threat of Antoine's vengeance bore down on him. "If you confess now, you may still find a path to redemption," Thierry urged. The tension in the room was almost unbearable. Julien, realizing this might be his sole chance to break free from Antoine's oppressive shadow, decided it was time to speak. Antoine Leblanc's paranoia was reaching a fever pitch. The relentless media scrutiny and mounting pressure from the investigations began to unravel his composure. In a desperate bid to maintain control, he hired a private investigator to keep tabs on Thierry and his allies. One fateful night, the investigator delivered alarming news. Thierry is orchestrating a confrontation with Julien Lève to force a confession, the investigator reported, his voice tense. Antoine was seized by a wave of panic. The prospect of Julien's confession threatened to dismantle everything he had fought so hard to protect. Resolute in his desperation, Antoine maneuvered to sabotage Thierry's plan. He used his influence within the prison to orchestrate a devious scheme, bribing guards to isolate Thierry, thereby obstructing any attempts at communication or decisive action. As the weight of his guilt grew unbearable, Julien Lève was slowly being consumed by an overwhelming sense of remorse. The constant threats from Antoine and the mounting pressure of his conscience began to erode his mental stability. Night after night, Julien lay awake, tormented by vivid recollections of his actions and their devastating consequences for Thierry. "How could I have betrayed him like this?" Julien agonized, tears of regret streaming down his face. The thought of confession started to seem like the only path to redemption. "If I come clean, perhaps I can start to make amends for the damage I've caused." Julien pondered, summoning every ounce of courage to confront the truth. The risk of personal safety weighed heavily on him, yet the burden of guilt was more excruciating than he could endure. Meanwhile, Pauline Martin's pursuit of the truth led her deeper into dangerous territory. Her relentless investigation into Antoine's corrupt activities was increasingly perilous. One fateful night, as she made her way home, Pauline sensed an unsettling presence. With each step, her anxiety mounted, her heart pounding with fear. Suddenly, a car barreled towards her at alarming speed. Pauline's instincts kicked in, and she tried to escape, but the vehicle grazed her, sending her crashing to the ground in excruciating pain. The car sped off into the night, leaving her injured and shaken. Emergency services arrived swiftly, transporting Pauline to the hospital. As she lay in her hospital bed, pain and fear mingled with a steely resolve. "This attack only confirms that we're on the right path," she thought fiercely, her determination to see justice served unshaken by the assault. Marie Durand, undeterred by the mounting dangers, continued her tireless quest for the truth. While poring over financial documents one afternoon, she stumbled upon a crucial lead, an encrypted email exchange between Antoine and a co-conspirator that outlined their elaborate scheme to frame Thierry. "This is the breakthrough we've been waiting for," Marie exclaimed, a surge of relief and exhilaration washing over her. The evidence was compelling and indisputable, providing a concrete link between Antoine and the conspiracy. Recognizing the significance of her discovery, Marie immediately reached out to Pauline and Captain Dubois. She shared the new evidence, and together they began strategizing the next steps in their mission to expose Antoine's extensive corruption. Amid this escalating chaos, Thierry Dupin was abruptly snatched from his cell and thrust into solitary confinement so grim and desolate that it felt like a prison within a prison within a prison. The isolation cell was a dark, frigid space that seemed to magnify his sense of despair and abandonment. Cut off from the world outside, Thierry was enveloped in a profound loneliness, heightened by the icy silence and unrelenting gloom. This drastic move was part of Antoine Leblanc's insidious plan to thwart any chance Thierry had of reaching out to Julien or his allies. As days dragged on, Thierry fought to cling to his sanity and hope, his resolve tested by the oppressive solitude. "They will not break my spirit," he vowed silently, even as the weight of isolation pressed down on him with crushing intensity. Back in the courtroom, the atmosphere crackled with palpable tension. The seats were packed with a throng of spectators, their eyes locked on Julian Leave, who was about to make his dramatic confession. The room was a cauldron of anticipation, with journalists and onlookers hanging on every moment, eager to see the outcome of the high-stakes drama unfolding before them. Julian, visibly trembling and weighed down by the enormity of the truth he was about to reveal, stood up with a sense of dread and resignation. With a quivering voice that barely masked his anguish, he addressed the judge. "I can no longer bear this unbearable guilt," Julian began, his voice faltering. "Antoine LeBlanc coerced me into framing Thierry Dupin. We manufactured false evidence and bribed witnesses to ensure his conviction." The room erupted into a cacophony of shocked gasps and hushed whispers as the gravity of Julian's words began to sink in. The judge swiftly restored order, and Julian continued with his devastating revelation. "I acted out of fear and greed, but the weight of my conscience is too much to bear. Thierry is innocent." Julian's confession reverberated through the courtroom, his tears streaming down his face as he was overwhelmed by the crushing pressure of his admission. Amidst Julian's heart-wrenching confession, Antoine LeBlanc sat in the courtroom, his face contorted with growing dread. Realizing that the walls were closing in, he attempted to make a discreet exit, hoping to escape before the full impact of the revelations could hit him. However, one of his accomplices, a man whose weary appearance spoke of countless threats and bribes, decided that he could no longer be a part of Antoine's corrupt empire. As Antoine made his move to leave, the accomplice stood up, his voice cracking with the strain of his conscience. "There's more you need to know," he declared, drawing every eye in the room to him. Antoine froze, caught in a moment of paralyzing fear, as the accomplice began to unravel even darker layers of the conspiracy. Not only did Antoine frame Thierry, but he's also deeply entangled in influence peddling and money laundering. He threatened my family to ensure my compliance. The courtroom buzzed with shock and disbelief as the accomplice's revelations shook the audience to its core, adding another layer of scandal to the already explosive case. As Antoine LeBlanc's desperate attempt to flee was thwarted by court security, his guilt became glaringly apparent to everyone present. His frantic move to escape only further cemented his culpability in the public eye. With the confessions of Julian Leave and Antoine's accomplice coming to light, the wheels of justice began turning swiftly. The judge, now fully convinced of Thierry's innocence, issued an immediate order for his release. Outside the courthouse, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation and support. The community, having followed the saga closely, had gathered en masse to celebrate Thierry's vindication. As Thierry emerged from the courthouse, the air was filled with the sound of cheers and applause. Supporters held up signs and banners emblazoned with messages of justice and solidarity. Overwhelmed by the outpouring of public support, Thierry's eyes welled up with tears as he took in the sea of familiar faces, friends, neighbors, and even strangers who had stood by him throughout his ordeal. "Thank you, everyone," Thierry said, his voice choked with emotion. "Your unwavering support kept me going. Without it, I wouldn't have made it through." The community's heartfelt welcome transformed Thierry into a symbol of resilience and justice, his story inspiring countless others. Pauline Martin, whose investigative tenacity had been instrumental in uncovering the truth, now had the full picture. She spent a sleepless night weaving together the intricate details of the case, from Antoine's elaborate conspiracy to Thierry's relentless quest for justice. Her article, published the next morning under the headline "The Fall of Antoine LeBlanc, The Truth Revealed," was met with a wave of acclaim. Pauline's fearless reporting not only cleared Thierry's name but also laid bare the extensive corruption within the system, igniting a broader call for judicial reform. The article garnered widespread attention and praise, solidifying Pauline's reputation as a fearless journalist committed to uncovering the truth. Captain Pierre Dubois, who had been a crucial ally in exposing the conspiracy, understood the need for one final act of contrition. At a press conference, he stood before the cameras with a heavy heart, ready to make amends. "I want to take this opportunity to publicly apologize to Thierry Dupont-Dubois," began, his voice thick with emotion. "I deeply regret my role in the miscarriage of justice and the suffering it caused him and his family. Thierry is an innocent man, and I am profoundly sorry for my errors." Thierry, present at the press conference, approached Dubois and extended his hand. "Thank you, Captain. I accept your apology," Thierry said, shaking Dubois's hand. This act of forgiveness symbolized a turning point in both their lives, marking the end of Thierry's fight for justice and the beginning of a new chapter for him and his community. The bonds of trust and solidarity that had been forged in the crucible of adversity now promised a future where justice and integrity could flourish. Thierry and Lucas, finally reunited after the long and arduous battle for justice, began the process of rebuilding their lives with renewed hope and determination. The trials they endured not only strengthened their bond but also gave them the resilience to face the future with optimism. Moving to a new home far from the shadows of their past, they embraced a fresh start. As they settled into their new life, Thierry, with tears of gratitude in his eyes, embraced Lucas tightly. "We did it, son," he said, his voice filled with emotion. Lucas, with a confident smile and a determined gleam in his eyes, responded, "Yes, Dad, we are stronger now." Marie Durand and Pauline Martin, whose unwavering dedication had been instrumental in exposing the truth, were publicly honored for their efforts. At a ceremony held at the town hall, both women were awarded medals of honor in recognition of their bravery and perseverance. "You are the true heroines of this story," declared the mayor. His words met with applause from the audience. Marie and Pauline, deeply moved, shared a look of mutual understanding, knowing their work had made a significant impact on justice and integrity. Antoine Leblanc faced justice for his heinous crimes, including falsifying evidence, bribery, and engaging in corrupt schemes. The court handed down a severe sentence, a fitting consequence for his actions. "Justice has finally prevailed," the prosecutor declared as Antoine's conviction was announced. The sight of Antoine behind bars was a powerful symbol of victory for Thierry and the community, affirming that truth and justice had triumphed over corruption. The murmurs of approval and satisfaction in the courtroom reflected the collective sense of relief and vindication. Captain Pierre Dubois, inspired by his involvement in Thierry's case, took decisive steps to reform the police department. He introduced new investigation protocols, ethics, and transparency training, and established a hotline for reporting corruption. "We cannot allow mistakes like this to happen again," Dubois emphasized at a press conference. His commitment to reforming the police system was met with a positive response from the community, who appreciated the efforts to ensure greater integrity and accountability in future cases. Reflecting on his journey, Thierry, now free and exonerated, acknowledged the profound impact of the support he received. In an interview, he vowed to remain vigilant against injustice. "This experience has shown me the importance of fighting against corruption and protecting the innocent," Thierry declared. His commitment to justice, supported by the community, resonated deeply with those who listened to his words. As a testament to his redemption and acceptance by society, Thierry was invited to speak as the keynote speaker at a public event focused on justice and human rights. Standing on stage before a large, attentive audience, Thierry felt a profound sense of relief and accomplishment. "I am honored to be here today, and I promise to continue fighting for a fairer system," for all he said. His words met with a standing ovation. The warmth of the applause and the beaming faces in the crowd reaffirmed his resolve, reinforcing his belief that he was on the right path. As we come to the end of this incredible journey through Thierry and Lucas's story, we've witnessed a powerful testament to the strength of perseverance, the impact of courage, and the relentless pursuit of justice. From the heart-wrenching struggles to the triumphant moments of redemption, this narrative has shown us that, even in the darkest times, hope and integrity can shine through. Now, we'd love to hear from you. What has this story taught you? Is there a particular lesson or insight that resonated with you, something you plan to bring into your own life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We're eager to know how this journey has impacted you. If you found this video compelling and inspiring, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more stories that matter. Your support helps us continue to bring these important narratives to light. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and we look forward to seeing you in our next video.